Useless. That's what she called me. Not in anger. Not in the heat of an argument. Just matter-of-factly. Like she was describing the weather or commenting on a piece of furniture that no longer fit the decor. I was standing in the kitchen, my kitchen, though I didn't know yet how much that detail would matter, drying dishes after dinner. She was scrolling through her phone at the table, and she said it so casually to my son. We need to start looking at facilities. She's becoming useless around here anyway. I remember the dish towel going still in my hands. I remember the exact pattern on the plate I was holding, small blue flowers around the rim. I'd bought that set 30 years ago. My son said nothing. He just nodded and kept eating. That silence, that one moment of agreement, changed everything. But what they didn't know, what neither of them could have possibly known, was that their cruelty had set something in motion. Something that would unravel their comfortable little world thread by thread. What they also didn't know. The house they were planning to keep wasn't even theirs. I'm not the person who screams or throws things. I never have been. But that night, standing in that kitchen, I became someone else. Someone who understood that survival sometimes looks like surrender. What happened next? They never saw it coming. I need to take you back. Not because I want sympathy, but because you need to understand who I was before that word was attached to me like a label I never asked for. I was 23 when I married David. He was kind, genuinely kind, and we had one son. Michael. I remember counting his fingers in the hospital, convinced there had to be more than 10 because he was so perfect. David died when Michael was 7. Heart attack. He was 32. After that, it was just us. Me and Michael. I worked 2 jobs for years, receptionist during the day, grocery store stocker at night. I learned to cut hair from a library book, so I wouldn't have to pay for Michael's haircuts. Every sacrifice, every late night, every missed opportunity. I told myself it was worth it. Michael needed me whole. I went to every parent-teacher conference, every school play. I taught him to drive in the parking lot of an abandoned shopping center. When he got into college with a partial scholarship, I cried for 3 hours straight. Happy tears. Proud tears. I had done it. Alone. I had given him everything. He met Sarah in his senior year. She was confident, driven, came from money. I liked her at first. She seemed to make Michael happy. They married a year after graduation. For a few years, I saw them on holidays. Then Michael called and said they'd bought a house. Wouldn't I like to move in? They had so much space. I could help with the grandchildren they were planning. I hesitated. I had my own small apartment, my own routines. But Michael sounded so eager, so much like the little boy who used to beg me to read one more bedtime story. I said yes. I didn't realize I was trading my independence for their convenience. I didn't realize that what I thought was theirs might actually be mine. The first few months were fine. Pleasant, even. I had a bedroom on the first floor with a small bathroom attached. Sarah was polite. Michael seemed genuinely happy to have me there. Then Sarah got pregnant. That's when everything shifted, though so gradually I didn't notice it happening. It was like the temperature dropping 1 degree at a time, until suddenly you realize you're freezing. Mom, could you watch the baby while Sarah and I run to that dinner meeting? Mom, would you mind throwing in a load of laundry? Sarah's exhausted. Mom, we're having clients over Friday. Could you maybe stay in your room that evening? I didn't mind helping. That's what family does, I thought. I loved my granddaughter, Emma. She was beautiful, dark curls like Michael had as a baby. I'd rock her for hours, sing to her the same songs I'd sung to Michael. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being Michael's mother and became the help. Sarah started leaving lists. Tasks for me to complete while they were at work. Groceries to buy, meals to prep, rooms to clean. When I'd finish everything and sit down with a cup of tea, I'd sometimes catch her looking at me with this expression. Like I was wasting time that belonged to her. Dinner conversations changed too. They talked about work, about people I didn't know, about financial investments. When I'd try to contribute, Sarah would smile tightly and change the subject. That's nice, Patricia, she'd say, in the same tone you'd use with a child. Then she'd turn back to Michael. So about the Henderson account. I learned to stay quiet. Emma started preschool, and I thought maybe I'd have more time for myself. But Sarah signed her up for activities, dance, music class, soccer. Someone needed to drive her. Someone needed to wait during lessons. That someone was always me. The invisibility was the worst part. I could be in a room, and they'd talk as if I wasn't there. Make plans without consulting me. Decide things about the house, my home too, supposedly, without asking my opinion. I started spending more time in my room. It felt safer there. Smaller. Mine. But I didn't know then what I was about to discover. That mine meant something far more literal than I'd ever imagined. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Emma had dance on Tuesdays, and I'd just gotten back from dropping her off. My hip had been bothering me, age catching up probably, and I'd moved slower than usual doing the dishes after lunch. Sarah was working from home that day. Michael had come home early, which was unusual. I could hear them talking in low voices in the living room. I was in the kitchen, like I said, drying dishes. They must have thought I couldn't hear them. Or maybe they didn't care. We need to start looking at facilities. Sarah's voice was clear, unbothered. She's becoming useless around here anyway. I froze. The plate in my hands could have been made of lead. It's not about being mean, Michael. It's practical. She's slowing down. She can barely keep up with Emma's schedule anymore. And honestly, this house isn't set up for someone elderly. What if she falls? My hands were shaking. I set the plate down carefully, afraid I'd drop it. I just think, Michael started, but Sarah cut him off. You think what? That it's fine for her to take up space while doing less and less? We could use her room. Turn it into a proper home office for you. You're always complaining about working at the dining table. Michael was quiet for a moment. I held my breath, waiting for him to defend me. To tell Sarah she was wrong, that I was his mother, that I'd given up everything for him. You're probably right, he said finally. I'll start researching places this week. Just like that. No argument. No hesitation. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart, that's too dramatic. It was more like the foundation of a house settling, realizing the ground beneath it had been eroding for years. I didn't confront them. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the plate or storm into the living room demanding to be heard. I just stood there, holding that dish towel, staring at my reflection in the window above the sink. The woman looking back at me was old. When had that happened? Her hair was more gray than brown. Her hands were spotted, veined. She looked tired. She looked useless. I finished the dishes. All of them. I folded the dish towel into a perfect square and hung it on the oven handle. Then I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, listening to them continue their conversation, their voices casual and light, planning my disposal like I was a piece of furniture they'd grown tired of. That night, after Emma was in bed, after Michael and Sarah had gone upstairs, I made a decision. I would leave. But I didn't yet know that leaving would lead me to discover something they'd been hiding all along. I waited 3 days. I needed to be sure. Needed to listen to my own certainty and make sure it wasn't just hurt feelings or pride. But every day the word echoed. Useless. And every day, Michael looked through me like I was a ghost already. Sarah's commands got sharper. Patricia, Emma needs to be at dance by 4. Don't be late this time. I hadn't been late. Not even once. On the third night, I waited until everyone was asleep. The house settled into silence around midnight. I could hear the old pipes ticking, the heater clicking on. I pulled my old suitcase from the closet. The same one I'd used when Michael and I moved apartments all those years ago. The handle was loose, the fabric worn. I packed slowly. A week's worth of clothes. My toiletries. The photo album I kept in my nightstand, pictures of David, of Michael as a baby at his graduation. I almost left it. They hurt too much. But I couldn't abandon them either. I found the envelope at the back of my drawer. The one I'd been putting cash in for years. Money I'd saved from the small checks Michael would give me for expenses. $3,000. Not much, but enough to start. I looked around the room one last time. There was a moment, just one, where I thought about leaving a note. But what would I say? That they'd broken my heart? They already knew. They just didn't care. I walked through the house like a stranger. Past Emma's room. I paused there, pressed my hand to the door. Past the kitchen where I'd heard that word. I left my key on the entry table. That felt important. The front door clicked shut behind me at 4:30 in the morning. The street was dark, empty. My suitcase had a broken wheel that scraped against the sidewalk. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I walked 6 blocks to the main road and called a taxi. Bus station, I told the driver. He nodded and didn't ask questions. What I didn't know was that this escape would lead me to the one person who could show me the truth. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My friend said I would never reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. The bus station smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. It was that dead time of morning when night shift workers head home, and early commuters haven't arrived yet. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything look washed out, unreal. I sat in an orange plastic chair bolted to the floor. My suitcase leaned against my leg. I stared at the departures board, but the destinations blurred together. Where was I even going? I had $3,000 and no plan. I was 72 years old with a broken suitcase and nowhere to go. The reality of it hit me slowly, like cold water seeping through clothes. I'd left. I'd actually left. And now what? A woman with 2 small children sat down nearby. The kids were bickering over a tablet, and she looked exhausted, but she smiled at them anyway, divided a muffin between them with practiced efficiency. I turned away. That mother's love, casual and present, it hurt to watch. Had Michael ever loved me like that? Useless. I found myself crying. Not sobbing, nothing dramatic. Just tears sliding down my cheeks while I sat perfectly still. An old woman crying in a bus station at 5 in the morning. Invisible even in my grief. I thought about those facilities Sarah had mentioned. With my savings, I could afford maybe 6 months somewhere decent. Then what? I'd worked my entire life. Raised a good man, or I thought I had. I'd sacrificed every comfort, every dream, every possible future for myself. And this was where it led. For the first time since David died, I wondered if I'd made the wrong choices. If I'd loved too much, given too much. I was so tired. Not just physically. Tired in my bones, in my soul. That's when she sat down beside me. But what she was about to tell me would change everything I thought I knew about that house. She was younger than me, maybe mid-50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a loose bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore jeans and a cardigan that looked handmade. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, 2 seats away, respecting distance but clearly aware of me. "Rough morning," she said finally. Her voice was gentle, conversational. I almost didn't answer. "You could say that," I managed. She nodded, looking out at the growing crowd. "I used to come here a lot. Years ago when things were difficult. There's something about bus stations. Nobody asks questions. Something about the way she said it made my throat tight. Like she knew. Like she understood. I left home this morning," I heard myself say. "I don't have anywhere to go." She turned to me then, her expression patient and utterly non-judgmental. "That sounds frightening." "It is," I whispered. "Do you want to talk about it?" I don't know why I said yes. Maybe because she was a stranger, and strangers can't hurt you with their opinions. Maybe because I was desperate to tell someone that I mattered. So I told her. Everything. David dying. Raising Michael alone. Moving into their house. Becoming invisible. The word useless. The plan to put me in a facility. My pre-dawn escape. She listened without interrupting. Without offering empty reassurances. She just listened, fully present. When I finished, I felt emptied out. Hollow but somehow lighter. "They really hurt you," she said simply. "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. Then she said, "Can I ask you something? The house you were living in, did you say Michael bought it?" "Yes. Him and Sarah. I moved in after they'd been there about a year." "And you're sure about that? That it was definitely their purchase?" I frowned. Yes. Michael said they'd bought a house." "Why?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "My name is Jennifer Lawson. I'm a family attorney. And I've heard stories like yours before. More often than you'd think." She handed me the card. "Patricia, it is Patricia, right? Before you decide where to go or what to do next, I think you should make a phone call." "To who?" She smiled, and there was something knowing in it. Something that made my heart beat faster. "My son. He's a real estate attorney. Specializes in property records and estate documentation." She looked at me intently. "I have a feeling you won't need to worry about money once he looks into things." "I don't understand what you're suggesting." "I'm suggesting that you let my son verify some facts before you make any decisions about your future. Would you be willing to do that?" I looked down at the card in my hands. What did I have to lose? "Okay," I said quietly. Jennifer smiled. "Good. There's a coffee shop across the street. Let's get you something warm to drink, and I'll call him. He can meet us there in an hour." The coffee shop was the kind of place I'd always liked. Mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, the smell of espresso and fresh pastries. Jennifer ordered me a latte and a blueberry scone without asking what I wanted. We sat at a corner table. She asked me about David, about my early years with Michael. She laughed at the story about teaching him to drive. It felt normal. Human. I'd forgotten what that felt like. After about 20 minutes, she pulled out her phone. "I'm going to call James now, if that's okay." She stepped outside for privacy. I watched her through the window, pacing slightly as she talked, her free hand gesturing. Whatever she was saying seemed urgent. When she came back in, her expression was carefully neutral. He's on his way. Should be here in about 40 minutes. She sat down. Patricia, I need to ask you something. It's important. Okay. Your husband, David. When he passed away, did you own your home? Yes. A small house. Almost paid off. What happened to it? I sold it. Eventually. I needed the money for Michael's college fund. Where did you move? An apartment. A 2-bedroom so Michael could have his own room. And the money from selling the house. David's life insurance. College for Michael. His wedding, I paid for half. Then I kept some savings. Maybe 10,000. I paused. Actually, Michael said he'd invest it for me. Better returns than my savings account. That was about 5 years ago. Did he give you paperwork? Account statements? No. I trusted him. Jennifer's expression flickered with something. Anger, maybe, or sadness. Patricia, when you moved into Michael's house, did you pay rent? No. He said I was family. I just contributed to groceries and utilities. How much? About $800 a month. She nodded slowly. And you helped with childcare? Housekeeping? Yes. But that was just being part of the family. That was labor, Patricia. Unpaid labor. I hadn't thought about it that way. We waited after that. Finally, the door chimed, and a man walked in. Tall, maybe 40, with his mother's kind eyes. He spotted Jennifer, and headed straight for our table. Mom! He kissed her cheek, then turned to me with a gentle smile. You must be Patricia. Yes. James Lawson. He shook my hand, then sat down, pulling a laptop from his bag. My mother gave me some information, and I did some preliminary research. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions? His questions were specific. Property addresses, dates, Michael's full legal name. He typed rapidly, cross-referencing things on his screen. Then he stopped typing. He stared at his computer for a long moment. Patricia, he said slowly, I need to show you something. He turned the laptop toward me. It was a property record. The current owners of the house I'd been living in weren't Michael and Sarah. The owner was David Ramirez Estate Trust. Established 48 years ago. Trustee, Patricia Marie Ramirez. I don't understand, I whispered. James's voice was gentle but firm. Patricia, that house isn't your son's. It's yours. It always has been. The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me. That's not possible. Michael said. Your husband David established a trust before he died. The trust owns the property. He scrolled down. 5 years ago, the trust purchased the property at 47 Maple Ridge Drive. The house you've been living in. But I didn't. He used your money, Patricia. The money he said he was investing? Down payment. The monthly contributions? Your mortgage payments. On your house. I couldn't breathe. You're listed as the trustee. Michael and Sarah have been living in your house, rent-free, while treating you like hired help. And they were planning to put you in a nursing home so they could. Take it, Jennifer finished quietly. They were planning to take it. I was shaking. Tears streamed down my face. My house, I whispered. It's my house. Yes, James said. It's your house. James ordered me water. Made me drink it slowly. Jennifer held my hand across the table while I tried to process what I'd just learned. I want to go back, I said suddenly. Not yet, James said firmly. Not until we document everything properly. If you walk in there now, they could argue confusion, elderly manipulation. We need to do this correctly. What do I do? He pulled out a legal pad. First, we verify everything. Bank records. Timeline of financial transactions. And yes, Patricia, this is financial abuse. The word abuse made me flinch. I know it's hard to hear, Jennifer said softly. But your son has been stealing from you. For years. Over the next hour, James walked me through it. He pulled up bank records. Apparently as trustee, I had legal access. The money David had left me, combined with the proceeds from selling our first house, had been substantial. Michael had used almost all of it. The down payment, renovations, furniture, Sarah's car, $50,000 labeled family vehicle, Emma's private preschool. They'd been living off my money while telling me I was a burden. What about the money he said he invested? I asked. James's expression darkened. About $1,200. That's what's left. I felt nauseous. I'm going to file several things this week, James explained. A formal declaration of trust ownership. A cease and desist letter regarding the property. Depending on their response, we may need to pursue criminal charges for financial exploitation. Criminal charges? Against my son? That's your decision. But they've stolen from you. Committed fraud. We're planning to have you institutionalized. I thought about that morning. Sarah's casual cruelty. Michael's silence. What are my options? I asked quietly. 1. Evict them and take possession. 2. Negotiate, though I wouldn't recommend it. 3. Force the sale and take proceeds. 4. Do nothing, though I strongly advise against that. If I evict them, where will they go? Emma. Patricia, Jennifer interrupted gently. They didn't worry about where you would go. She's 7 years old. She is. And her parents will figure it out. But that's not your responsibility. I needed to think. But not too much time. They'd notice I was gone soon. James pulled out a contract. This is a standard representation agreement. I work on contingency. I don't get paid unless we recover funds. Are you comfortable proceeding? I looked at the paper. At this stranger who'd shown me more care in 2 hours than my son had in years. Yes, I said. I want to proceed. I signed my name, Patricia Marie Ramirez, trustee, and something shifted inside me. Survival. James moved quickly. By that afternoon, I was checked into a modest hotel, paid for by accessing funds from the trust. He helped me open a new bank account in my name only. Don't contact them, he warned. Don't answer if they call. Everything goes through me now. My phone rang that evening. Michael. Then Sarah. Then Michael again. 6 calls in 2 hours. I watched the screen light up and forced myself not to answer. The next day, James filed the paperwork. A formal declaration of trust ownership. A demand letter stating Michael and Sarah were occupying my property and had 30 days to vacate. They received it by courier. They know, James said afterward. What did they say? Their lawyer called. Claimed you were having a mental health crisis. That you'd wandered off confused. That you weren't competent. And I sent them the full documentation. Bank records. Property records. Timeline. Then I informed them that if they continued the incompetency narrative, we'd file criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud. What did they say? Nothing. Yet. 2 days later, Sarah called James. She wanted to negotiate. James put the call on speaker. We were in his office. Sarah's voice came through tight and controlled. Mr. Lawson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't believe there has been, Mrs. Ramirez. The documentation is quite clear. Patricia is confused. She's been showing signs of cognitive decline for months. Can you provide medical documentation of this alleged decline? Silence. Mrs. Ramirez, I have bank records showing systematic withdrawal of funds from a trust your mother-in-law controls. I have property records showing she owns the house you're living in. Which part is confusing? That was taken out of context. She heard you quite clearly. She also heard your husband agree to research nursing facilities. Your conversation about using her bedroom as an office. Would you like me to continue? Another pause. Sarah's voice changed. Harder. What does she want? James looked at me. We discussed this. Your client, I said, ready to speak now, wants you and Michael out of her house within 30 days. Full accounting of all funds. And she wants you to understand that she could file criminal charges, but has chosen not to. Yet. I heard Sarah's sharp intake of breath. Patricia? You're there. I am. This is insane. After everything we've done for you. You were living in my house, Sarah. Using my money. While planning to institutionalize me. That's not Michael, she's completely. James cut in. You have 30 days to vacate. Full financial accounting. If you attempt to damage the property or hide assets, we file criminal charges immediately. Are we understood? This is extortion, Sarah hissed. No. This is an elderly woman reclaiming what's legally hers. You have our terms. Respond within 48 hours. He ended the call. I was shaking. I can't believe I just did that. You did great, Jennifer said from her corner chair. What happens now? James leaned back. Now we wait. 3 days later, their lawyer sent a counteroffer. 60 days instead of 30. Partial accounting. Immunity from prosecution. James looked at me. Your call. I thought about Emma. Then I thought about that morning in the kitchen. Useless. Michael's silence. 30 days, I said. Full accounting. And I'm not agreeing to immunity. You're sure? I'm sure. They accepted. They didn't have a choice. I didn't go to the house while they packed. On day 29, James called. They're out. House is intact. Ready whenever you want to see it. Tomorrow, I said. James picked me up the next morning. Jennifer came too. I'd asked her to. I needed her steadying presence. We pulled up to 47 Maple Ridge Drive at 10 a.m. The house looked the same. Flower beds needed weeding. But it was there, solid and real. My house. I'd lived in it for 5 years without knowing it was mine. James unlocked the door with the keys he'd had Michael surrender. We stepped inside. It was strange. Empty in places where furniture had been. But also peaceful. Quiet in a way it hadn't been before. I walked through slowly. The kitchen where I'd heard that word. It was just a kitchen now. Sunlight streamed through the windows. My old bedroom, they'd left the bed and dresser. Too heavy to move, probably. I stood in the doorway, remembering all those nights lying awake, feeling invisible. What are you thinking? Jennifer asked softly. That it feels different already. Like it's breathing again. We went upstairs. Michael and Sarah's bedroom was empty. Emma's room still had some drawings on the wall, stick figures of our family. There was one of me labeled Grandma in wobbly letters. I touched it gently. I'm going to miss her, I said. You can still be her grandmother, Jennifer said. If Michael allows it. If you want to. I didn't know if I did. Not yet. In Sarah's office, I found a folder left in the closet. Real estate listings. Nursing facilities. The cheapest ones. State-funded. I read the reviews. Understaffed, poor conditions, wouldn't recommend. That's where they'd planned to send me. I closed the folder and left it on the floor. Back downstairs, James pulled out his tablet. I have the financial accounting. Summary. Over 5 years, they used approximately $380,000. The house is worth around $500,000 now. You have about $20,000 left in liquid assets. They can't pay back what they took. So I've lost it. Most of it. But you have the house. You have stability. And you have legal recourse. I thought about that. $380,000. David's legacy. Gone. I don't want to pursue charges, I said finally. Patricia, James started. I know. But I can't. He's still my son. And I don't want to spend whatever years I have left in courtrooms. I want to figure out who I am now. Jennifer squeezed my hand. That's fair. That's your choice. James nodded. If you change your mind, the evidence is preserved. You have 3 years to file. After they left, I stood in the empty living room. My house. My space. My life. I was 72 years old and starting over. It was terrifying. It was liberating. The first thing I did was open all the windows. Let fresh air sweep through. Then I sat on the floor in the sunlight. I made a list. Not of tasks. A list of things I wanted. A garden. I'd always wanted a garden. A book club. I used to love reading. Maybe a part-time job. Just to be around people. To travel. See the ocean. To matter. To myself, at least. 3 weeks later, I hired a gardener to help me plan flower beds. We planted roses. David had always loved roses. I joined a book club at the library. The women were kind. We met every Thursday. I looked forward to Thursdays. I bought a rocking chair for the porch and started sitting out in the evenings. Neighbors I'd never really spoken to started waving. Stopping to chat. I wasn't useless. I'd never been useless. I'd been used up. There's a difference. One evening, about 2 months after I'd reclaimed the house, Michael called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Mom. Michael. I wanted to check on you. I'm fine. Silence. Then, Mom, I'm sorry. We shouldn't have. No, you shouldn't have. I don't know what I was thinking. Sarah, she was so persuasive, and things were tight financially, and I would have helped, Michael. If you'd asked. If you'd been honest. But you stole from me. You treated me like I was disposable. You called me useless. I never said that. You agreed when she did. Your silence was just as loud. He was crying. I'm so sorry. Can we fix this? I looked around my living room. At the life I was building. I don't know. Maybe someday. But not now. I need to figure out who I am without being your mother first. Without being the person who gives everything and gets nothing back. That's not fair. Isn't it? He didn't have an answer. Tell Emma I love her. And Michael? Don't call again until you've actually figured out what you're sorry for. Not just that you got caught. What you did. Why it was wrong. I hung up before he could respond. It hurt. But it also felt like closing a door that had been letting in cold air for years. Jennifer visited sometimes. We'd have tea in my garden, which was starting to bloom. We became friends, real friends, the kind I hadn't had in years. I'm proud of you, she said one afternoon. Why? Because you saved yourself. Not many people can do that. I almost didn't. But you didn't stay. You walked out. You fought back. You built something new. She smiled. That's not nothing, Patricia. No, I agreed, feeling something warm settle in my chest. I suppose it's not. That night, I sat on my porch as the sky turned orange and pink. I could hear children playing down the street. Could smell someone grilling dinner. Could feel the evening breeze. I thought about David. I'd like to imagine he'd be proud. I thought about Michael and Emma. Maybe someday we'd find our way back to something. Maybe not. I couldn't control that anymore. What I could control was here. This house. This garden. This life I was building one small choice at a time. I wasn't useless. I was 72 years old, and I was just beginning. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But they never tell you about the tricks you unlearn. The ones where you shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort, where you believe that your worth is measured by what you give up rather than what you hold on to. I'd spent 50 years learning those tricks. It took one word, useless, to make me forget them. Sometimes justice doesn't look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like an old woman sitting on her own porch, drinking tea from her favorite cup, watching her roses bloom. Sometimes it looks like simply refusing to disappear.